Are you struggling with fear, depression, or anxiety? Are you in search of meaning and purpose? Would you like help navigating your current life circumstances? Tarot can help. Tarot is a powerful tool for healing, introspection, and spiritual awakening. The Esoteric Toolkit is a synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern science. It consists of tarot, numerology, astrology, and the Hermetic principles in conjunction with the modern science of consciousness. The revelation and application of this knowledge gives you the tools you need to help master your life, organize your mind, and overcome depression, fear, and anxiety. Learn to manifest your dreams and come into alignment with your highest self and the universe. Book your private one-on-one tarot reading today. Click the link in the description or go to www.theorderofchaosmagic.com. You can also find monthly tarot packages, a private Discord community featuring shadow work, and Mercury retrograde support groups, and much more by becoming a patron at patreon.com/theorderofchaos.
The following message is transmitted.
Welcome back to the Order of Chaos podcast. Today I'll be sitting down with Nicole Luna from Highest Good Readings. Nicole is a fellow professional tarot reader, and I love having readers on the show because we're just going to talk about tarot, how much we love it, maybe pull a few cards for you guys, and we're going to have a good time. Nicole, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Really good.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this. It's been fun talking to you over the last couple of weeks. I think we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about on the show.
For sure.
So to start, I just want to know, tell me how you came into contact with tarot and got on this path. I always love hearing everyone's stories.
Yeah. So I've always been like a really spiritual person, very interested in like magic and the occult, witchcraft, all of the above, and like from a very young age. And it was actually a friend in high school who bought me my first tarot deck. I think we were having like a sleepover or something like that. And I think that her older sister had a deck. And I was like completely obsessed with the idea of them. And that was like my first real like experience having my cards read and even like looking at a tarot deck. And so, of course, I guess this was before the explosion of the internet. The internet was still around, but like not in the way it is now. I didn't know about maybe we can talk about this, the idea that like somebody has to buy you your first deck. So the older sister told me that was the case, and I believed it, and asked for that for my birthday. And my girlfriend got me a nice Tarot for Beginners kit that came with a purple satin cloth and believe it or not, a Tarot de Marseille, which is like the weirdest deck, I think, for a beginner, but that's besides the point.
That is an odd deck for a beginner.
It is an odd deck. I was like, I don't even read Roman numerals yet. I'm like 16 years old. Let me like see how I do with this. But I think it was probably a really cool way of getting to know some of like the bases of tarot and like understanding, the symbolism in color and numbers and all these kinds of like, I kind of feel like I took like a backdoor approach to like learning about the cards because I didn't have as much symbolism available to me in the artwork from my first deck.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of how I got started, was doing readings for myself and exploring, and then quickly developed a very large collection of card decks. And then, would pull cards for friends at social gatherings, and eventually people would, ask for a reading here and there. And then a couple of years ago, when I went on maternity leave, I started doing readings professionally, and here we are today.
That's awesome. Did you find that you could do it right away, that you could pull the correct cards out of the deck immediately? Did it take you time to build up to it? What was that like for you?
I think I noticed what we would now refer to as kind of that like stalker cards and stuff like that starting to happen for me in the beginning, because I was only reading for myself. So I very quickly realized that tarot had an energy and had a spirit. And that's my belief. Like, I know that there's a lot of people that use tarot for, like enhancing psychological kind of explorations and just as journaling prompts and art. And like, there's the options are endless when it comes to tarot. And that's why I love it so much. But for me, I could feel that there was some sort of a spirit or an energy attached to these cards, especially since the same ones kept following me around. And I learned those cards very quickly and very early, and developed kind of like, personal relationship with some of the cards and their meanings. Even to this day, I when I do readings for myself, there's still some cards that I don't think I've probably pulled for myself too often. And those cards I'm learning about through doing readings for other people, which is kind of cool.
Yep. Totally. I totally get all of that. There are cards that I've never pulled for myself, for sure. And there are cards that are major themes in my life. Totally. They come up when I read for myself, when others read for me. Within my little witchcraft group that I have, a friend of mine just did readings for each other the other day, and he pulled the same fucking cards. It was ridiculous.
Don't you love when that happens?
We just got trolled, and I'm like, oh my God, we just got trolled by our tarot cards.
That's funny.
And I know that every reader has their own particular belief system about exactly what's happening when we're reading tarot, and they're all accurate. They're all true. Like, there isn't one that is correct. It's a multidimensional tool. And like we were saying before, belief systems power your magic. So you can, and multiple belief systems work. Because they are systems, we're using systems to connect to the other side and to let the answers come through the cards. I don't think there's any one explanation for it. Personally, I feel like they're a tool to communicate with our spirit guides and with divinity and with our ancestors. But also, like you were saying, the decks, like this deck has a different personality than that deck.
Totally.
And this one over here, I only use for magic. I don't use for divination. They each have their own flavor and a spirit to each deck. In fact, I used to own a copy, whatever you call it, of the David Bowie tarot deck.
Oh, that's cool. I haven't used that one before. What's it called? Like the
Starman Tarot.
Starman.
You know what it's got? It's got the freaking spirit of David Bowie. Okay, because
that's wild. I don't know about that.
For real. I gave the deck away because I was sick of it playing jokes on me.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it had this like dark humor to it. That was so David Bowie. And I'm like, man, he really poured his energy into this project, and you can feel it coming back out at you.
Wow, I love that. That's really cool.
And that was very early on in my tarot days that I gave that away, because I certainly wouldn't do that now. I was like, whoa, this is too much for me. And so I gave it to a friend who was a more experienced reader, and just went back to my wild unknown deck. And this is back when I was still.
Oh yeah, that's actually one of the only, like, that was like a real trendy deck for a long time, and now I'm seeing people moving away from that one a little bit. But I just never ever felt called to that deck. Like, I don't know if it was maybe just like the type of art, and like how some of it was very it's a beautiful deck. It just, for whatever reason, didn't resonate with me. And I have a couple of decks like that, actually, that I was like, I'm going to love this. The artwork is so beautiful. And and then you get it in your hands and you're just like, all right, cool.
100%.
Yeah.
I usually end up giving those decks away because it's really got to feel like it's a good match. Like, it's like when you meet a person, it's like, are we going to be friends or just acquaintances, or do I actually not want to know you? No offense to the person, no offense to the deck. Thoth Tarot, I ain't fucking with Thoth Tarot.
No.
No.
Okay.
Which is weird because Thoth has been my primary spirit guide for many, many, many years.
I thought we were going to talk all about that tonight. That's what I thought was going to happen.
That's what everybody thinks.
Podcast.
Yeah, no, I do not mess with. I have a copy of it, and I will use it for magical purposes because of its astrological correspondences. But I'm like, I have a very love-hate relationship with Aleister Crowley. I love so much of his work. I despise some of his work. It's very in and out for me. And the thing about Thoth Tarot is that I'm just too ADHD of a person for that level of memorization. I'm a very intuitive reader. I use a storytelling method, but I feel like with Thoth Tarot, it's like you're just doing math, and it works. It's a very powerful deck. It's just not for me because I don't.
The artwork never appealed to me with the Thoth. It feels very galactic to me. Almost perfect for like an Age of Aquarius style deck, I suppose. But maybe more of that shadow aspect that we were talking about earlier. Yeah, I heard somebody once say like the Rider-Waite-Smith is kind of like a friend giving you very honest advice, whereas the Thoth is kind of like somebody who really doesn't care about your feelings coming in and like kind of kicking your ass and telling you
it is a very masculine energy deck. It's a very I wouldn't say Saturnian necessarily, but like definitely heading in that direction of Saturnian energy. I think the reason I got turned off to it was that I was reading the book that goes along with it, that one there. And in it, Aleister Crowley makes the argument not only for switching the placements of Strength and Justice, 8 and 11, which is switched in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but then he also makes the argument for switching the Star and the Emperor, and yet does not actually print the deck that way. He does print the deck with Strength and Justice switched, but then in the book says, oh, but you also got to switch the Star and the Emperor, which I don't resonate with, doesn't really make sense to me. And so I'm just like, you know what, this is, I don't know. It's just maybe someday I'll really learn that deck, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah, I don't own a Thoth deck myself. I've had readings with them, and I've had my eyes open for one that like particularly calls to me. Like I'm looking for maybe a different kind of rendition of the artwork because, like I said, I'm not particularly called to it. But maybe one day I'll decide to explore it. But it hasn't happened yet.
One aspect of the Thoth Tarot that I do really like, although again, I'm kind of back and forth about it, I do like Aleister Crowley's changing of Strength to Lust. I think it might be a little more honest. I think it might be a little bit more honest to call that card Lust than Strength, or at least to say that is an element of that card for sure. As a double Leo, I can attest that is accurate.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't like I said, I don't read the Thoth, but I always have found the Strength card to be a little bit difficult to interpret, like for myself and sometimes even for others. Like I'll pull it and you'll be like, okay, cool. It's a Strength card. We're talking about courage. We're talking about overcoming limitations. I just find that it did need maybe an added kind of element there. And maybe that's what the Thoth gives it.
Yeah. And I'm not familiar enough with the Thoth deck to know if he did that with any other cards, but I do like the sort of darker psychological twist that's on it. But again, it's a system that I've really yet to explore and learn. Do you read reversals?
I do, but not in the way that maybe, the websites tell you and the books tell you to read them. I interpret reversals as a resistance to the meaning of the card. So when I'm pulling for
that's smart. I like that. Sorry, go on. That's interesting.
It's like a blockage or something, or some sort of resistance to the message of that particular card. So if I'm doing a reading for somebody and I pull a bunch of reversals, I usually will let them know like about the typical upright version of the meaning of the card, but that's something going on in their life. And this is where intuitive ability and psychic ability comes into play with reading the tarot, because anyone can read tarot. But if you work on your spirituality and you work on your gifts, that's where you can then, I believe, then make predictions that are more accurate and interpret reversal cards in a different kind of way. Because I don't believe that they just mean the opposite of the upright version.
I think that's a very simplistic kind of very beginner interpretation. And you know what's interesting that I noticed is as I progressed with tarot and as I continue to progress with the tarot, the agreements that I make with the cards about what they mean can alter and become more nuanced and more advanced.
Totally.
I used to read reversals And now because I'm a little bit, I'm not going to say OCD because that's not true. It's not a real thing, but as a colloquialism, I'm a neat freak. Let's put it that way. And I like them all to be upright. And I keep them meticulously upright so that when I read them, I'll just kind of know if it's the negative aspect of the card or not, because that's the system that I've developed. Your cards will adhere to whatever system you develop as long as you like make that agreement with your deck. I guess that's how I think about it.
100%. And I feel like when I'm doing readings for myself, what I will typically do if I want to read reversals is I'll just break my deck into 3 piles. I'll start by having everything upright, break into 3 piles, and then I'll just take a few moments to kind of meditate on the questions and the things that I'm looking for. And I will reverse one of those 3 piles so that each time I'm reading, I am creating a unique set of reversals. So if they're going to come out, they're coming out for a reason, in that fashion. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think that the more you practice and the more you're exposed to life, the deeper the meanings of those cards have. And, you know, I think that's one of the blessings of being able to do readings professionally is, you know, you get to experience other people's situations through the cards and then learn and teach yourself and evolve as a reader.
I've noticed that I'll come across certain combinations of cards that I would never really pull for myself. I'm like, wow, that combination of cards means this in that person's life, and really take note of that and be like, now next time I see that combination, I'm going to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
What was it the other day? It was the Knight of Wands and the Hermit and the 3 of Hearts. I'm like, this motherfucker's gonna ghost you. That is what's happening right now. The cards are telling, because that was the question essentially, was, is this guy worth my time? It was one of my clients. Right. And immediately like, no, yeah. This dude, you met this dude on Tinder. He's gonna hang out with you for 2 days and you're never gonna hear from him again. That's totally what's gonna happen here. Yeah. So I just remember that combination, thinking like, this is the combination. This means someone's in a ghost, the Hermit and the Knight of Wands. And it was, and in the way I had it, the Hermit was on the left and the Knight of Wands was in the middle. So the Knight of Wands is looking away from the Hermit.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. I always pay attention to the directions of the characters on the cards or what's happening. And like in the images related to the other images, I get a lot of information that way.
Yeah, I really, really like that. I also like to use an oracle deck to give me further information about what the cards are doing sometimes.
Cool.
Not any oracle deck. I like to use the Lenormand. I'm not sure if you're like totally familiar with that, but it's a like specific system of oracle not similar to, very different from tarot, but I think that it just adds that extra layer sometimes that I'm looking for in a reading. And yeah, I think that there's definitely times when I'm stumped by the cards and then I'm a little bit confused about how to go ahead and explain something. And then when I get started, and sometimes a client will be like, oh yeah, okay, so this is what's happening. And then I'm on a roll. I'm able to like very clearly understand, because sometimes the conventional meanings of the cards are not making sense for your client. Like you could have taken that reading about the Tinder date in a completely different direction. You could have said something, well, you know, with the Hermit here, I feel like right now it's time to focus on yourself and like do some inward reflect. Like you could have taken it in a different direction. And instead you were able to give a very clear response, which I think is amazing, because that's how multifaceted the cards can be. Yeah. Like when I pull cards for myself, I get yeses and nos. And if I pull cards for clients, it depends. It depends on what they're looking for, right?
I definitely find that specific questions generate specific answers, and vague questions generate vague answers most of the time. Sometimes you'll get a specific answer to a vague question. Also, especially with new clients, if you come to me for the first time and you have a very specific question, and let's say you only book 15 minutes, okay, cool, we can totally do that. But very frequently, when you book a first session with a medium, with a tarot reader, with any kind of psychic, your spirit guides are going to have so much shit they want to tell you that they've been wanting to tell you for years and years and years, and you haven't been listening. And that's all going to come through the cards first, because they've been waiting in line to talk to this person forever. That happened to me when I first went to a medium. and I had been through a couple experiences that I was in denial about. The first time I went to a medium and was able to communicate with my dad, who passed away when I was 12, like, I was crying my eyes out, but like there was so much that he had been waiting to say, and he had tried on multiple other occasions, and I was just like, I'm freaked out, and I didn't listen, So I find that happens a lot with first-time clients, or if I'm doing the mediumship work and I'm talking to a client who had a loved one recently pass away, then I notice with those readings 2 things. Number one, I notice that the process is different. When I'm shuffling, I will physically feel someone tap on my shoulder and say, stop shuffling. And then the readings coming through will be much more image-centric than the actual meaning of the card. It'll be a much more like, here are the pictures that I'm trying to, send. The meanings of the cards will matter too, but for whatever reason in that circumstance, for example, one of my clients, her sister just passed away, and her sister was a lawyer, and the justice card came up. I'm like, okay, this, which doesn't mean justice. This is a significant. It's signifying that you're talking to the right person.
Yeah.
And that's how I interpreted that. So yeah, I'm. This is why I'm saying I'm way too intuitive of a reader for Thoth Tarot.
Yeah. And I think like in the tarot community at large, that word intuitive reader, sometimes like people will roll their eyes at that. At least that's been my experience, right? When I've talked about reading cards intuitively, I've met with a lot of people who are like, well, you can't just like make up the meanings of the cards. You have to know your shit. And like, you have to know all about like, the golden dawn, and you need to know that. It's like, I get it. I know those things. I'm bringing in this added layer. Right. And I think that's why this is like such a practice, right? Because not only do you establish that relationship with the cards as a tool and as artwork and the meanings of them in that way, but as you establish and improve on your gifts, it just, I find, helps like unlock more and more layers of psychic ability.
Absolutely. And personally, I feel that all that knowledge is very important. And, I'm a very intuitive reader, but if somebody wants to get in a debate with me about meanings of cards, I'm down.
Yeah. Oh, me too.
Let's talk about numerology. I'm into it. But, and I said this on the last episode too, this is how I always try to explain it to my clients. When Michael Jordan is lining up a shot, he is not doing the math.
Nope.
He's just feeling it. And that's why he's the greatest player of all time, because you have to get to that point where you can just feel it.
Do you have a card that you were saying earlier that there's cards that are kind of like signifiers for you? Do you identify with one particular card? Or is there a few?
Yes. Okay. So let's put this out there. Number one, my real name is not Sanhre. Okay, that's not even a real name. The name that I use for this show and for my magical practice is derived from a very particular tarot card. And if you can figure it out, it's an anagram. It's an exact anagram. And if you can sort that out and you can do not comment it. If you private message it to me, you will win a free 1-hour reading. So there is a card. I'm not going to say what it is.
You've just set up a contest. This is awesome.
Yeah, I've been meaning to do it for a while because the card was very, very special to me. And that's why I derived my magical name from that card. It's a particular card from a particular deck. Good luck, everybody. But I'll tell you one card that comes up in my readings for myself a lot is the 8 of Cups. And there's been a lot of situations in my life where I've just had to walk away and said, like, this isn't for me anymore. I because I connect to it so much, I think of it as one of the saddest cards in the deck.
I think it's a very empowering card.
It definitely is. It definitely is, because you have the strength to walk your own path. You have the strength to walk away. But having to sucks, especially when it happens over and over again. Totally. A perfect example of the 8 of Cups in my life. I lived in New Orleans in 2004. So that was I had a great life there. It was wonderful. I was a chef, and then hurricane. What do you do? There was a hurricane. I'm lucky I'm alive, Lucky I wasn't in my apartment. I was lucky I evacuated, but it's a situation where it's funny because we're talking about water. Well, I had to get in my car, pack up some friends and a couple things to wear, and we all left town and we all lost everything when the levees broke.
Have you been back since?
Yes, I went back. I visited, went to the place I used to work. I actually, I don't talk about this a lot on the show, but I was a chef for 20 years. Of the words food and wine actually tattooed on my knuckles.
Oh, fun.
When I went back 5 years later and took my wine exam, my sommelier's exam, at the restaurant where I had been doing my apprenticeship as a chef. So it was great, but even if you go back now, the damage isn't still fully repaired yet. There's still damage from Katrina all over New Orleans. It's incredible.
Yeah, I went, I was there for my honeymoon, oddly enough, but it was after Katrina.
It's such a magical place, isn't it?
I'm obsessed and I can't wait to go back.
Yeah.
But we did go on kind of like, I did my research and I tried to find like the least touristy ghost tour that I could possibly go on. It still was a little bit touristy. I don't think you're going to like find this like perfect like experience, but what the person did bring up, which was quite interesting, and I wonder if you felt this as well, is that the energy and some of the haunted locations seem to have less activity since Katrina. So they were talking about the energy shifting and moving because of this natural disaster that, like shook everything up, which I thought was really, really quite fascinating.
Well, one of the things that happened in the flood that a lot of people maybe heard about this on the news, but it wasn't one of the most talked about points, is that so many of those old cemeteries, everything floated. I mean, the ground was saturated with water. You had coffins floating up from the graveyards and like being sent essentially downriver. And so they literally like physically moved thousands of gravestones and bodies that had been in a particular place for hundreds of years, or 100, I don't know, a long ass time. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I wonder if that, potentially shifted some old hauntings and then potentially activated some new.
It definitely just went in there and moved the energy around.
Yeah,
shifted things into different places, different locations. Some of the energy must have left town and some new energy came into town. It's definitely a different vibe than when I lived there pre-Katrina.
Wow, it's really interesting.
But what a magical place, right?
It's so
what cool. A magical place. I mean, I've been drawn to occultism my whole life, and the first time I went to New Orleans, I think I was probably 11. And I just fucking fell in love with them. I knew right then, because my dad passed away when I was 12 and we were on a road trip. So I must have been between 9 and 11. And I was like, I'm going to move here someday. I'm going to live here someday. And then cool. As soon as I graduated culinary school, I was like, right there.
That's kind of how I feel about Salem, Massachusetts. I really, I've done my astrocartography and I have a sun line that goes straight. It's not quite Salem. It's just north of Salem that it goes through, but never felt more called and at home in a place ever. And my dad did his ancestry DNA, like the spit tests or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it says that we have someone who came over on the Mayflower and somebody who died in prison during the trials has my dad's last name. And so now I'm on this whole like ancestry kit trying to like make some sort of past life connections and like, why am I feeling so called to this place? But Salem is cool. I would imagine there's a lot of like witch wars there though. Like a lot of like, I feel like it's kind of like almost like gang territory with like the different shops and like so many different magical traditions all existing in this pot, That
is so appealing to me. I can't even tell you. I want to go participate in that. I want to go there and set up shop and be like, yeah, come on, bring it. Let's fight. Right?
It's such a cool place. But I mean, I haven't heard any. I've been now 4 times. I used to go on an annual summer trip. And then, the pandemic happened. I did end up going in October of 2021. I don't recommend going there in October. It just becomes a little weird.
It's like going to Disneyland in August. Don't do
it. Yeah, I usually go in the summer. I like to be by the ocean. It's just like a beautiful place in the summertime. And I feel like you can really connect with the energy of the land. And it's cool. October's fun, but I almost feel like spirit decides to like get the hell out of town or something during October. There's just like too many people.
The worst time to go to New Orleans you can imagine is fucking Mardi Gras.
Oh,
Don't go to Mardi Gras, because all those pictures you see of Mardi Gras, that's just Bourbon Street on any Tuesday night. Okay. When it's Mardi Gras, there are people like stacked on top of each other. You cannot find a bathroom. You will get arrested if you pee in the street immediately. I know, not because it happened to me, because it happened to friends. It's not, I mean, Mardi Gras is the worst thing I have ever smelled in my life.
Oh gosh. And New Orleans is not in a particularly non-smelly place. It's kind of stinky on a regular day.
Yeah. You know, for people who don't know, two things about Louisiana, but New Orleans in particular, I don't know if this is still true, but when I lived there, the entire Bourbon Street strip was classified as a bar. And that's why you're allowed to just take your drink and go walk to another bar with it. That's fine. Yeah. Another thing you can do in New Orleans is get a daiquiri at a drive-through.
I didn't do that when I was there.
Did you see them? Are they still doing it?
I don't know if I saw anything drive-through related. I did walk around on Bourbon Street with a drink in my hand, though. I definitely did that. Yeah.
It's a good time. Okay, so I want to get back to what we're talking about. Now, do you have any particular cards that really follow you around and have a lot of meaning to you in your own readings?
Yeah. I think for me, like, I feel like especially when I started my business reading tarot, the Queen of Wands was like a card that would come up for me a lot. And I really felt inspired by her. And I have a lot of fire in my birth chart, even though I'm a Capricorn, and in my big three, I don't really have any fire, but I have an Aries North node. So there was this kind of interesting witchy vibe about the Queen of Wands, and she kind of goes out there and gets what she wants, and she doesn't really need anyone, but she wants certain people in her life.
Queen
and
of
I was
Wands
just
is a
like,
bad bitch.
Yeah, she's kind of like a boss, a boss lady, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I don't know. I think I told you this, but I had like this really cushy teaching job for 10 years that I left when I decided to do the spiritual work full time. And that was a really hard decision to make, you know, especially as a teacher, you've kind of got yourself set up. And I just realized at one point that I'm still a teacher. I'm still meant to be a teacher. It's just, I got at some point kind of got it wrong. And my Saturn return really kind of made me address that. And the Queen of Wands was following me around a lot during that time. So, yeah. And I think that I have a little bit of High Priestess sort of vibes sometimes when I pull cards. If I'm going to ask questions about leadership or what I'm doing with my practice, she comes out and offers her support. I feel like sometimes. So yeah, there's definitely a few cards in the deck that.
I mean, those are excellent cards for you. They're perfect. I mean, that right there. I mean, maybe I'm inferring this because you're telling me about it and I see the connection, but we're talking about the Queen of Wands. She's a strong woman who's not going to take no shit from anybody and is forging her own path. And with the High Priestess, and this is psychic ability and intuition. And, you know, here you are with a psychic business.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it makes sense, right? But
what's your life path number?
9.
You're a 9.
I'm a 9. Yeah.
Cool.
What about you?
1.
Oh, well, then you're the magician, aren't you?
I was going to say the magician. Yeah. That's why I was curious. I was curious if you were a 2, because the magician is another card that really starts to come through for me a lot, especially if the cards are referencing me, like saying, no, we're talking about you to you, then the magician will come up a lot. Yeah, it's a weird, complicated sort of thing I have going on with my cards.
I used to have like a really weird, shadowy interpretation of the magician for a long time. Really? And him and I only recently started like making peace with each other. I'm starting to see the light there with, you know, the balanced aspect and the manifestation possibilities with that particular card. But for me, for a very long time, I attributed it to an old relationship, to be honest. and like kind of this feeling of like narcissism.
For sure. Well, no,
through.
that's part of it. That's a part of it. I believe so. Yeah. Because I think that the energy of the magician, to me specifically, is it's the energy specifically of someone who has just had a very, very powerful spiritual and magical awakening experience and has awakened to their own power, but and it is able to use it, but it's not refined yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, and if you know, because you deal with people just like I do all the time, when you have a powerful spiritual awakening, in the beginning, you're like, oh my God, I understand everything. I'm the magician. Everybody should listen to me. I'm going to be a guru kind of nonsense that you go through when you have this experience, because it's very powerful. And then after a while, you settle down and you move on to the high priestess, and you understand that it's not just, oh, you're so powerful. You got a long way to go, dude.
Totally. And it's like, I think that, well, the high priestess and the hermit both have that kind of like shadow working sort of energy to them as well. I feel like the high priestess is a little bit different because it's more about like listening to your guides and listening to spirit and cultivating those psychic gifts. And then with the hermit energy, which I guess, with my life path number, I technically have the hermit as well. I've always felt that card just felt contemplative and kind of like this like interesting in between, like this like in between time before actually stepping into your power, is like acknowledging and like cultivating it and understanding it and
integrating everything you've learned from the journey from 1 to 9. 9 is that integration point before you move on to like the next level, almost like you got the world, and then now we're on to the next set of archetypes. I definitely think that there is something that you're dead on. Like with the magician, there is spiritual power and awakening, but also ego.
Yeah.
And with the high priestess, now the ego is starting to dissolve, and you're starting to realize, okay, there's a long way to go on this journey.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the hermit, finally, you're 9, you're like, okay, I'm going to integrate all this stuff that I've learned, and then move on to the next set of challenges.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I've always thought of the court cards as the archetypes of people, of everyone you meet in your everyday life, and the major arcana are the archetypes of the gods, whatever the archetypes of consciousness, the archetypes of spirituality, of the spiritual journey. It's the story of the spiritual journey, which not everyone undertakes in their lives. I mean, how many people go through their entire life without any of this? Like most people, right?
Right.
It's crazy. I can't even imagine not having this in my life.
I know. And then I think with the spiritual journey of the major arcana, it feels, for me, for a long time, I was like, but then what happens when you get to the world? Like, do we just go back again? And like, we're at the Fool again? I was always confused by that when I first started kind of, learning about that process. And now I'm like, I understand more now that it doesn't necessarily have to be linear, because I used to interpret it like that. I used to, okay, here comes, I don't know, like, here's the Fool. So pretty soon I'm going to be in the groove of things. Right. But that doesn't necessarily always work out like that, just in the same way that old shitty patterns come up. And like, sometimes you need to be pushed back to that, like, place of integration, or you need to have another tower moment or whatever it is to kind of,
if the journey were more honest, if the journey from the Fool to the world were a little more honest, there would be a tower card here and then one there and then one here. You go through 4 or 5 tower moments along the way, for sure. It's definitely not a totally linear journey. It can take a number of different pathways, and certainly I've had many, many, many tower moments because I need them. I need them. I like that. And this is why I always tell clients that the Tower and Death are 2 of my favorite cards in the deck. And I'll say to my clients, congratulations, if I'll pull the Tower and the Death for them as a way to, A, I know they're going to be scared. But B, like, this is your personal transformation. This is what you're after. This is what it's all about. Yeah, it's going to be hard and might be painful and it might suck a little bit, but this is what we're here for. It's a fall of established patterns and a rebirth of a new you. That's it's in my opinion as good as it gets. I would rather have those cards than the Lovers and the whatever else. I don't know.
But again, like you had mentioned earlier, sometimes even those cards can indicate or have a more simplistic sort of explanation. Like I've pulled the Tower card to represent people doing a home renovation. Like, you know what I mean? Like that card has come up as a symbol of like, are you redecorating? Are you like tearing down a wall or something? Because like, you know, the tarot.
I'm gonna remember that. That's clever, and it's very accurate because, you know, a home renovation is one of the most stressful things you can undertake in life.
It is.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like such a big deal, but it's. I mean, that's perfect. It's the perfect symbolism. I mean, that's great. Yeah, I'll remember that.
I mean, usually it's a big thing. Like it's a big energetic thing going on. A lot of like it's an opportunity to transform, right? But yeah, can be simple. Can be a home renovation.
Do you find reading for yourself to be very difficult?
It all depends. Well, I have a few plant allies that I like to use when I read for myself that keep me in a little bit more of a conscious place of awareness with my guides. So when I read for myself, the odd time that I do, because I don't do it very often, I will do that. I will kind of prep myself with some sort of a ritual, make sure that my reading is really going to count and be accurate for me. Because I do find that when I start using, because tarot used to be, and it still is, very much like a friend, but it became at one point a friend that I was taking advantage of. And, you know, a quick little shuffle to ask about something that I was anxious or nervous about. And you better believe that I was getting the 9 of Swords or some other indication
because
that like
you were anxious, though, because it's going to reflect back to you how you feel. Yeah,
because I was anxious. But and that's why when I teach people tarot and I you know talk to students about things like this, is I will always say, just don't go there. Like, don't approach the cards if you're not in the right frame of mind to do so, because either you're going to end up with nonsense answers, because tarot's not about that, like playing games life, or you're going to end up misinterpreting a negative card, because
that's what happens to me.
Yeah.
I have a hard time interpreting my own readings because I have an attachment to a particular outcome.
Of course.
There's something I want.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'll do the cards and see that it's not what I want, and my brain just won't put the reading together like I would be able to do for a client, because I'm attached to a particular outcome. And I find that problem actually gets worse as I've gotten better and better and better at tarot, or at least I've realized more that, wow, my attachment's really interfering with my own reading. So I still do them, and like you, I just have to get into a really meditative space. And I mean, when it comes to plant medicine allies, that's something I'm doing pretty much 100% of the time.
Oh yeah.
I ingest
I'm an evening person, but but I know what you mean. Like it just, sometimes there's tools that can help us stay in that
because you want to detach
balanced
from your ego a little bit. It's necessary. You know, it's easy to do when you're reading for the people, but even if you're reading for close friends and you have wishes for them, you want things to work out for them, it can still be a little bit difficult to do a really accurate reading, because again, you're just attached to your friends or yourself or the outcomes that you want for the people you love. I do find that this isn't true with clients. And this is why I try not to get too personally attached to my clients, is so I can read more accurately for them. As I have a client, as I learn more about them and I maintain that exact right amount of energetic distance, my readings get more and more and more accurate. For me, it's like they get less and less and less accurate, especially regarding my love life, because it's just a disaster. And I'm so sick of even asking the cards about it, honestly. I'm just like, oh, fuck it, whatever.
I think there's always a theme or a question or a couple of questions that we're guilty of asking and over asking. And the cards sometimes will come through with what you're hoping to hear, if that's a possibility. And that's usually what I talk to people about is, I'm predicting possibilities. You have free will. You're able to make choices and decisions in your life that will, affect the outcome of this reading potentially, but I'm predicting possibilities based on your current energy, what you're currently doing, what spirit's suggesting, all of those things.
Yeah, I definitely find that what tarot does most effectively is mirror your own energy back to you,
Yeah.
especially when you're not very aware of it. Like you're not
Yeah.
aware of what's in your own energetic field, and that's really the difference between a person who's spiritually awake and a person who's not, is just awareness of your energetic field and what's going on in there, but the cards will always reflect it right back to you. So rather than telling my clients this is what's definitely going to happen, it's like, no, this is where your energy is leading you right now, and if you change your energy, you will change the outcome of events, right? So there's that, but then there's also what I call urgent messages, which is when your spirit guides are like, no, we have something to say to you right now. Fuck your question, fuck everything you want to know, this shit we want to tell you. So those are the two types of readings that I do most often. Occasionally I do mediumship readings. It's just that they happen less frequently because there's a little bit less of a market for that, I suppose.
Yeah, I think when you were saying that spirit guides sometimes they have really urgent messages that come through the cards, that's actually how I like to start my readings with people. Is I say, okay, listen, I'm going to pull some cards, I'm going to see what comes up, because spirit's going to say what they need to say, and then you can ask your question. So we usually, and then sometimes it's interesting because sometimes I'll get to the point in the reading where I'm done giving those first few messages, and then my client will say, well, that was what my question was. That's why I'm here. And I'm like, oh shit, like, what are we going to talk about now for the next, and then, we move on, and the cards always have something else to say.
That happens to me a lot too. It's fun. And I mean, that's the crazy thing about tarot, is it is so much fun. At the same, to get to do this and get to interact with people and help guide them, it's an honor, but also it's like, I'm still blown away by it every single time. Still totally blown away by how magical tarot is. And I say this all the time, but the only word that can describe magic is magic. You can't, there's just no other word for it, because it inspires that awe in you. And it's like, wow, this really works. It is incredible. And I love that feeling. I love being inspired that way. And it's so, I feel so lucky to have this relationship with the cards and with spirit, because when I've had it since I was a kid, since I was a teenager. But I've really, really, really embraced it more over the last 5-6 years. And it's made a huge difference in my overall quality of life.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love it. Even, it's so funny. Even my daughter, who's only 4, feels called to the cards. And I'm like, get out of my cards. Like, she's always kind of like, I actually ended up buying her own little deck. They have ones for kids now too, which is kind of fun. And, it's the very, 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 very overly simplified, artwork and messages and meanings and those sorts of things. But I can tell she's gravitating towards the magical arts as well. So
that's so good. That's so
fun.
Cool. That must be so much fun.
And then do you ever customize your decks?
In what way? What do you mean?
Like, do you cut off borders on your decks, or? Oh, really?
No, I've never. I do that to my books. I mark my books up. I fold them. I highlight. I circle stuff. I'll scratch something out and be like, "You're wrong," because I expect to give them all to my son someday. So I want him to have notes. But I've never done that with a deck of cards.
If I get a deck of cards and I'm not fussy about like a border or something like that, I will just go to town scrapbook style and cut them off. I will take like gold ink and like do some interesting work on, on the sides of the cards. I'll clip the edges with like a scrapbooking tool. I will do all of this before I consecrate the cards, because they're just paper when they arrive in the mail, right? And I have a couple of decks that I've done that too. It's been really cool, actually.
That is really cool. It's never occurred to me to do anything like that. But that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I did it with one of them was the Druidcraft Tarot. The cards are massive and they have like a very obnoxious border. I'm like not a huge fan of borders. Sometimes it's fine. And they just wouldn't fit in my hands properly. So I ended up, there's Facebook groups of people showing like
that's another thing about those cards are too big.
Oh yeah.
They're like this big. I've got big hands and I still think those cards are way too big.
And they're hard to shuffle.
Yeah, they're hard to shuffle and hard to they like to stick together. They like to stick in their groups, which is something I've noticed too about all tarot decks, but especially with the Fifth Tarot. When I first got it, it was just like, this just doesn't feel right to me. So do you want to pull some cards?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I dropped a bunch of mine, so give me 1 second here, pick them up. I'll just grab a different deck, actually. Ooh, haven't used this one in a while. So what I kind of figured we would do, rather than reading each other, is just kind of shuffle and pull some cards and talk about whatever energies those cards bring up for us.
Sure.
Do you want to go first? You pull a card, I pull a card?
Sounds good.
Or as many as you feel called to pull.
Well, I had one fall on the floor. That must come to the table. So I'll pull two. All right. First card is the Two of Wands. So for me, I think that this card is kind of talks, it talks to a couple of different things. It talks obviously about thinking about your future, planning your future, investigating possibilities for your future. But to me, this card is kind of linked to soul searching and kind of like trying to find your purpose in the world. He's holding a globe and looking off kind of into the distance. I think this card, when it comes up for people in readings, and when I do readings for people, it usually has to do with like how you can actively co-create your reality. So what are you planning? What are you working towards? And how are you showing up to make sure that the things that you're trying to manifest actually come into your reality? What is the role that you're playing, right? So that's kind of usually what I would say about that card. And the other card that came up for me was the Four of Cups. And to me, this is like, it's like an apathetic kind of card. I feel like it has like a bit of like a depressed energy with this particular card. But you've got that hand of God reaching out with a cup, trying to be like, hey, listen, like we're giving you all these ideas. So I feel like, to me, this is the perfect example of like resisting spirit's messages, like resisting what your guides have been trying to tell you, maybe what the cards have been trying to tell you, and choosing to stay stuck. I really think it's that this is about choosing to stay in the comfort zone, choosing to stay stuck in those patterns that have to go, and ignoring the practical good advice that either people are giving you or that you're receiving from spirit, but that you're choosing to ignore. This is like ignoring the signs.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Because I think that with the Two of Wands, my immediate thought, whenever I pull the Two of Wands with a client, is how is your relationship to spirit? How, like, what is the quality currently of your relationship to your spiritual practice? Is it, because that's what this card is. It's your relationship to your spiritual, to spirit in general, to your own practice, to that part of yourself. And then with the Four of Cups, my keyword is always ungrateful when it comes to the Four of Cups, because it's like stagnant energy. It's like you're choosing to stay in a rut. You're in a rut, but you're sitting there. You're in a rut because you refuse to get up and move on from it.
Yeah.
And that's what can happen when you have a poor relationship to spirit.
Yeah.
So I mean, isn't it amazing though how the cards just tell us, like they just tell a story, and the story makes sense every time. It's
yeah. You gonna pull some?
yeah. Let's see what I get. And I like doing this because I think that it gets to demonstrate to the listeners, a little bit of the magic of tarot and why we do this and why we're obsessed with it. Because a lot of people are like, "What? I don't get it." I'm like, "Yeah, because you don't get it.
No,
if you get it, you get it." So, let's see what spirit wants us to talk about. The Six of Pentacles and the Sun. Much happier
Nice.
over
Yeah, I
here.
got some pretty apathetic cards.
Well, it's interesting because we're getting two like very, very different perspectives here, right?
Yes.
So with the Six of Pentacles, I always think, wow, sixes are great. Sixes are always the most harmonious point within the journey from 1 through 10. And specifically with Pentacles, we're talking about harmony in the material realm. It's always, this card to me is like a big sigh of relief. Like everything's going to be okay. You're stressed out about your finances. You're stressed out about everything going on in your life. This card always tells me, okay, things are going to settle down and you're going to have a period of calm. And with the sun right there with it, it's like, everything's going to be all right. Take a step back. It's going to be okay. You're going to be happy. Things are going to be working out for you here in the earth realm. And that's wonderful. The sixes are very interesting to me because of the perfect spot of harmony. With the Six of Pentacles in particular, it speaks a lot to balance. Like you've balanced your life out in a way where now you can feel safe. You can feel like you can move through the world in a way that you're safe and confident. Like, let's say it's almost like the Six of Pentacles would come after the Eight of Pentacles in my mind. Like you've done the hard work and you're on the road now and things are going to be all right. Or it could be you won the lottery. I don't know. Maybe you didn't do the hard work. Maybe everything's just working out for you. But that's fine too. I mean, that's really kind of what it indicates with the sun right next to it.
Oh yeah.
The sun is one of my favorite cards, obviously. Because I'm a double Leo and I just love the sun and I love being in the sun and I cannot wait for this winter to be over.
I
my
know,
gosh.
it's been brutal.
Yeah. My snowblower stopped working and I told you about that last week. Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I live in Barrie and it's like we get buried in snow every time. But yeah. I would be very happy to pull these cards for myself.
Of course.
Put it that way. It's about
it's a
the most
naked
positive
baby on a horse. Like
yeah. if we just put the nine of cups in here with it, it would be like the most positive possible reading.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. You want to go again?
Yeah, let's do it. Cool. All right. So I have the Tower and the Page of Pentacles. So with the Tower, obviously this is a card that people don't like to see come up in a reading for a lot of different reasons. The imagery of the artwork is pretty terrifying. You know, it's two people jumping to their death. Potentially, we don't really know what's at the bottom of the Tower. Have you ever tangent, but have you ever seen the After Tarot? Have you heard of this deck?
No.
So the idea is that the artist is showing you what happens directly after. So like for the Fool, it's like what happens if he actually falls off the cliff.
Oh no.
It's really cool. And like he's like holding on and like the dog is calling for help. Like it's really cute. But anyway, so with the Tower, I think that you know, for obvious reasons, this is a structure or a system or a pattern or a behavior or whatever in your life that needs to be destroyed. It needs to come down. It needs to be taken away. It needs to be rebuilt. And the only way to do that is to actually like really have a clear look at your foundation and like what is actually working and what needs to go, right? And so obviously the Tower is important so that we can make these big changes and create kind of the life that we want to from the ground up. But the idea being that, you know, you're going to rebuild and create something stronger and better and something that's going to be offering a lot more stability, you know, and then like I had mentioned earlier, sometimes it can be a very kind of clear cut sort of, are you undergoing a home renovation sort of interpretation. The other thing that I like about the Tower, and, you know, this is also true about a couple of the cards in the deck. The other one I'm thinking of is the Ten of Swords, is the use of the color black in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. It's not a color that we see pop up very often. Like there's a lot of primary colors that are used in the deck, but we don't see a whole lot of black. And I feel like this is like an indication of power and protection from the divine, despite the traumatic event that the card potentially is foretelling. You know, and with like the 10 of Swords, that guy is dead, right? Like it's like the most intense looking card.
Is more of a card of death than the death card is.
Totally. Yeah. Or just complete and utter despair. Like
annihilation.
Just it's a huge ending, right? I love looking at the colors in the deck for that reason. Like I noticed a lot of cards that have blue are usually more spiritually minded cards, talking about your intuition, your psychic development. Yellow and reds are usually positive, happy cards. You know, so the Tower kind of has a little bit of everything going on in it, right? And but a lot of black. So it is about destruction, but for the sake of renewal. And then with the Page of Pentacles, we've got like a lot of yellow. So it's a happier card, a more gentle energy. But I love the pages because they come in as messengers. And so the Page of Pentacles would be like a messenger about either your finances or a career or creativity, or some sort of idea that's going to support any of those avenues. And you know, I love the youthfulness of the pages. I feel like it's just like nice, youthful energy. It's very excitable. So are the Knights. The Knights are all very excitable too, but they have a plan.
Knights can be jerks though.
They can totally be players. The Knight of Cups is like, when I pull that card in a reading for somebody about relationships, I'm like, no. The
Knight of Wands is definitely the fuckboy card in my opinion.
Totally, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. There are very, very few circumstances where I pull the Knight of Wands, and whenever I pull it, I'm like, oh shit, this isn't. You know, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. You know, I'm probably going to tell you that your partner or your boyfriend or this dude that you're interested in is not on the same emotional maturity level that you are, and won't be for a while.
Yep.
At the very least, depending on what other cards are around it.
For sure.
That's an interesting combination that you pulled. I think that. With the Tower, the fall of established patterns, but with the Page, it's a perfect follow-up, because with the Page of Pentacles, it's kind of like now that pattern is out of your life. Like the Page of Pentacles, I always see as a young person finding their way, but with good direction. Like they're finding their way, but they really are finding it. They're not lost. They're just at the beginning of really finding their path.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I usually, like for my clients, when a page comes up, I will have to intuitively sit with whether or not I think it is actually discussing a person in the client's life, like a young person, like you had mentioned, or if it's the energy of a young idea, right? Like the energy of something like that coming in. So and I think that's where, you know, the intuitive piece comes in with a reading,
which is so important. I mean, I'm shocked to think that there are readers out there who don't understand the value of intuitive reading and entrusting your own psychic abilities and interpreting the cards a number of different ways to come up with the most accurate story of someone's life. I mean, if you did it just by the books, I think that would be, I don't know, I've never experienced that. It's actually something I would be interested in experiencing. If I ever met a reader who did it that way, I would be very interested in getting a reading from them and seeing how they do it. Doesn't make sense to me, but that's me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's a time and place for tarot books, and I have a lot of them. I have several that I haven't even read yet, to be quite honest with you. But that's just because I think it is so much about your personal journey and your interpretation of the cards as well, and listening to your intuition. And then, you know, I think things like books can be really great, especially for when you're doing readings for yourself. You know, like if you want an unbiased sort of cut and dry approach to what the meaning of the cards are, that's where things like books and websites and stuff come into play for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say earlier, and you were talking about using an oracle deck for clarity. I've recently just started using runes, essentially for the same reason. Like if I can't figure out a reading, I'll get out my runes and say, and just add a little bit of like connecting principles to the cards. I find
Nice.
that helps a lot. I have not found an oracle deck yet that I'm like really stoked on, but I'm not against them or anything. I just haven't found one yet that I'm like, wow, this vibes with me.
Yeah, I love the Lenormand because they were created by, I don't know, I don't remember all of the history right now, but there was a psychic named Madame Lenormand, and she was from France. I think it's the 18th century, but don't quote me. But anyways, the idea was that she used to use playing cards to do readings for people, which is,
Mhm.
you know, we've seen things like that done before. But she eventually created her own system of oracle cards that incorporated playing cards with certain symbols, things like, you know, a dog and a key, and like just base kind of symbols that have certain archetypes and meanings
Dream
associated with them.
interpretation symbols, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think the reason I'm so called to this system is for the same reason I'm called to tarot, is I can feel a spirit attached to these cards.
Yeah.
Like I literally feel like there's a little, like this Madame Lenormand person who I have to do some more research about, but I really feel like she is there and present with every reading done with those cards.
Oh, that's
And
so cool.
they're really interesting because like you can do yes and no, very direct readings, and they give you a lot of information and they're very direct. They're different than the tarot. The tarot is like, okay, what's the big picture? What are all the little, you know, the little idiosyncrasies that we need to like think about here, all like the fine details. Whereas Lenormand is very much like, this is going to happen in the next couple of days or whatever the time frame is. Like it's pretty direct. And I have other oracle systems as well. And those are fun from time to time as like a final kind of message, like a take home message during a reading or something. But I usually just use the Centennial Rider-Waite-Smith and my Lenormand during readings.
You know what I miss doing? Because I used to do exclusively live readings at festivals, and I had an office, which I loved before I started doing the internet thing because of the pandemic. But I used to just lay out all my decks, and I'll have a client say, I would say just touch whichever one, you know, really feels right to you, and then I would use that deck for that client because they all have like a slightly different flavor. I don't actually own a Rider-Waite-Smith deck.
No way. Have you not been you don't feel called to the art then, maybe?
I know I do. I totally do. I just don't have one. I just have, I think here's what happens. I'll go to I'll either get on Amazon or whatever metaphysical shop I'm searching on online, or, you know, at a bookstore, and I'll mean to get a RWS deck, and I'll be, oh, but I like this one too.
Yeah.
I end up getting something, you know, but like I'm using the Crow Tarot right now, which is it's an RWS style deck. It's not the exact same art, but the artwork the symbolism is essentially the same. This one's using all crows, which I really love.
Nice.
Especially, you know, with my affinity for the Norse gods. This deck really speaks to me. The Santa Muerte deck really speaks to me because my ancestors are Hispanic. I have the Occult Tarot by Travis McHenry, which is a incredibly powerful deck. Scares me a little bit. In fact, one of my students the other day bought it as his first ever tarot deck. I'm like, buddy, bro, dude,
a lot.
Slow down. That's a very serious deck.
Yeah.
You know, with a lot of information and several books you would need to read.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Hermetic Tarot. That one's a little intense.
That's another one I want, though.
Yeah, it's cool. There's a lot of astrological kind of layers there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Well, I'm going to do one more card pull, and I think that's all we really got time for.
All right.
See what we got going on. The Seven of Pentacles and the Lovers. This is a person looking for love.
At work.
Very possibly. Yeah, very possibly. I always think of the sevens as skills and seeking and like what you're looking for here in the material realm. And yeah, it definitely could be at work. Or it could be a person who's like very focused on their material life, and very focused on, I mean, this. So here's another thing. Okay, this card, the Lovers, and I tell you, I have, or let me lay this out there. I'm a life path 1. I was born during Venus retrograde. I have no planets in my 7th house, and I do not do well in relationships. It's just, I think that I was meant to do this on my own, and I'm okay with that now. But this was me for most of my life. I'm like, I'm, as a double Leo, I would like to have an intimate connection with somebody. Like, it's something I'm definitely, it fuels me. Love fuels me, but you get obsessed with it, and you don't focus on the other areas of your life. And you're always trying to fill that tank because you feel empty. And it can, so this reading to me, even though it could be interpreted as positive, I'm thinking about my own situation in my own life. And I'm like, this is me. This is a mistake that I've made in my life. And the other thing I was going to say is that this is true for me. It's not true for everybody, but in my readings, the Lovers is more likely to indicate a hookup than a relationship. The 2 of Cups comes up a lot more often when I'm talking about like a long, sturdy relationship. This could just be a Tinder date.
Yeah, I agree.
And then this, again, this is my own personal interpretation, but with the 7 of Pentacles, I'm thinking like, yeah, this is a person who's really, really putting a lot of energy into trying to find a partner, probably putting too much energy into it, frankly. But I'm certainly flavoring that with my own background and life experience.
No, I like that interpretation a lot. I think for me, the Lovers has always been just about relationships in general, right? Like, it's not necessarily about love relationships, although it can be. But for me, I've pulled that to talk about, like, that could even be potentially a networking connection, like those 2 cards.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Because this often will also indicate a strong business relationship or professional relationship.
Especially with that 7 of Pentacles there. Yeah.
Totally. So it depends on the question, right? Depends on what the client asks and what it is their the specificity of the question. But in a general reading, especially because I'm pulling the cards here for myself, I'm looking at them like, this is the story of my life.
I think that when doing professional readings, that can be a little bit difficult sometimes when somebody's like, I don't know, just like whatever the cards want to say, and like, that's cool. I like those kinds of readings, but I usually do tell people, like, you are going to see more value from a tarot reading when you have a question, because, I can use my intuitive gifts and connect with spirit. But that's, if you're booking a tarot reading, like, it's a little bit different,
It is, especially when the cards could have multiple meanings like that. And the question is vague. There could be a very specific answer in the somewhere, but it could be hard to get to that specific answer if the question is vague. And that's actually fine. I really enjoy doing those kinds of readings too. I do find that they're easier to do when I am sitting in the presence of someone and they're like, I'm in their auric field, then it's easier. It's something I've developed over the last couple of years doing this online. I use a double terminated quartz crystal and I place it on my laptop, and that helps me connect to the client a little bit better. But yeah, I prefer specific questions. And I, like you said, I think you get more value out of a reading. But if a person is at the very, very, very beginning of their spiritual journey, sometimes those questions that are vague or just like what's in your field are the most valuable because they can be the most insightful. As you move along and you've gotten a lot of readings, you definitely want to start coming up with very specific questions because you just get more out of your reader that way. Like I want to answer as many questions for my clients as I can within the time that they booked. But that has a lot to do with them. It's not just about how fast I can go. It has to do with like, have you thought this out?
Totally. And I think that those open-ended questions, or, let's just hear what spirit has to say, or let's just hear what the cards have to say. Those kinds of readings are amazing, but they are amazing for certain types of people. Like a person who's already kind of on a little bit of a spiritual journey, or an open-minded person who's reflective. That would not be a good reading, I think, to just do at a party or something like that, like, or with somebody when it's like they're kind of a skeptic, or like they don't have their own spiritual practice, or they're just not a very emotionally aware person. Like, that's going to be much harder to get those kinds of messages delivered in a clear way when you're maybe working with somebody who's not very emotionally aware.
the most annoying thing to me in the world is when a client, and this has only happened like 2 or 3 times in the last 6 years, but a client will book like specifically to prove that tarot doesn't work. And I'm like, I'm not, like, number one, I ain't giving you a refund.
Yeah.
Number two, like, this isn't a guessing game. That's
No.
not what tarot is. It is not I'm going to hide the answer to the question. I'm going to ask questions I already know and let's see if you get the right answer. Like, that is not how it works, and so that is particularly annoying to me, but it happens so infrequently that, okay, whatever. Like, if you want to waste $50 on an hour of your time and my time, I mean, I guess, but
right.
Right.
For sure. I think it's funny that you keep quartz crystal by your computer, because I have a big selenite bar that holds up my keyboard.
Oh,
and I
nice.
use it as like my little energetic kind of barrier between like myself and people that I do readings for online.
I use the double terminated quartz to facilitate the connection, and I use this orgonite pyramid.
Oh, I don't have one of those things. I'm
cool.
a little confused by how they actually work, but
they
seem really interesting.
Yeah, they basically cancel out a lot of the harmful radiation from your phone, your computer, EMFs that can interfere with your ability to read a client. And then also just because we're surrounded by electronics, it's not good for us.
Yeah.
These little things, they help out. I definitely noticed like a clearer energy at my desk space since I got it. It's been a couple of years, but yeah, crystals are I love crystals. I got to do a whole episode on crystals because I love crystals. They're so cool and they work and they're demonstrable, and you can explain them in scientific terms, which is really helpful to people who are new on their spiritual journey. Everybody wants to hear the scientific reasoning behind this stuff at the beginning. I mean, most people do. I think there's some people who are just like, no, let's just do it. I'm all about it. But I think a lot of people come with a skeptic attitude at first. And so crystals are a great way to sort of initiate them into a spiritual experience in a way that's also explainable in the scientific way.
Yeah. And it's tangible too, right? Like it's a physical thing. So people connect with physical items. Usually, and you can feel the way that a crystal changes your energy field as soon as you pick it up. Yeah.
They all have a different feel to them. And if you just learn to tune into subtle energies, like malachite is very powerful.
Oh yeah.
Malachite will like shake you up. It's like coffee.
Yeah.
Clear quartz has a calming effect. It sorts you out. Like if you have a lot of problem with like intrusive thoughts or too many thoughts going on at one time, get a big old chunk of quartz and put it in your pocket. It'll help you settle all that out and balance it out. But
you need to program quartz. You need to tell it that that's what its job is, because it's an amplifier, right? And it can take on any particular intention, I suppose, right? I really like for anxiety, I really like amethyst. It's just, I feel like it's that like, well, it's a sobering kind of energy, right? So if you're scattered, it helps to kind of, and actually they used to serve alcohol in amethyst glasses back in like the Middle Ages and stuff. And nice. It was believed that it would keep you from becoming too intoxicated. Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Crystal history stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, Nicole, that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much for doing this. It's so much fun. I really love talking to you. Definitely a kindred spirit in this realm.
Well, I had so much fun talking to you, and yeah, this was great. I really enjoyed myself.
All right, cool. We'll do it again.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Okay. Night.
All right. Good night.